All right, let's dive into something wild. I want you to forget everything you think you know about what reality is made of. We're going to explore a theory that throws it all out the window and rebuilds the entire universe from a single, almost unbelievably simple idea. What if everything, you, me, the stars, all of it, is just the result of one single point, moving?
Yep, that's it. That is literally the entire foundation. One point. And it moves. I mean, think about that. No quantum fields, no vibrating strings, not even space-time to begin with. Just a single process, a single actor, you could say, that's just doing its thing, tracing out all of existence with every single tick of the clock.
I know what you're thinking. That sounds impossible, right? I mean, how on earth could you get the sheer complexity of our universe? We're talking quantum mechanics, galaxies, even consciousness from something that simple. Well, that's the whole game. That's exactly what single-point theory, or SPT for short, is all about. It's proposing that everything we see, everything we experience, is nothing more than the statistical ghost, the persistent pattern left behind by that one point's endless motion.
Okay, so let's get into it. 1 point, 1 rule. We're going to look at the radical simplicity of this theory's starting point. The real magic here isn't about adding a bunch of complicated stuff, but starting with almost nothing and just seeing what happens. What are the rules of this game?
So check this out. On the left, you've got where standard physics begins. I mean, look at that list. Space-time manifolds, quantum fields, Hilbert spaces. It's a whole bunch of really complex, abstract stuff you have to assume from the get-go. And then, look at the right. That's SPT. One moving point, one rule for how it updates, and one principle to guide it: efficiency. I mean, the contrast is just stark. That's the minimalism we're talking about.
Okay, so here's the absolute core of the idea. In SPT, you never, ever start by assuming there are multiple things. Not two, not a dozen, just one. So instead of a universe jam-packed with different particles and fields, it's a universe of a single unfolding process. Everything else, all the different things we see, they just emerge. They're not fundamental. It's kind of like watching a single person with a flashlight run around in a dark room. From a distance, you might see what looks like lots of different lights and patterns, but really, it's just one source in motion.
All right, next up, reality is visitation frequency. This is where it gets really interesting. Because if there's only one point, where does everything else come from? You know, solid objects, energy, space itself? Well, the whole trick is to stop thinking of them as things at all. They're just statistics. They're patterns of behavior.
Let's start with a really weird concept from quantum mechanics, amplitude. It's usually talked about like some mystical wave property, but in SPT, it's way simpler. It's just a budget. Seriously, think of it this way. Every cycle the point has, say, 1,000,000 visits it can make. Amplitude is just a number that tells you how many of those 1,000,000 visits get spent at a specific location. It's just an accounting of where the point spends its time.
And that same logic, it applies directly to mass. So in this model, mass isn't stuff. It's not a substance. It's just an expensive habit. It's a pattern in space that is so demanding it requires the single point to visit it over and over and over again, really frequently, just to keep that pattern from falling apart. So something with more mass, it's just a more high-maintenance, higher-cost pattern.
Okay, so if mass is a high-cost pattern, what's energy? Well, it's simply the cost of changing that pattern. You want to move an object? You have to completely rearrange its visitation schedule. You have to take visits from here and move them over there. Energy is literally just the cost of that reallocation. It's the price you pay to change the system's budget.
And what about time? Is it the fourth dimension we travel through? Nope. In SPT, it's way simpler. It's just a counter. Tick. The point updates. Tick. It updates again. Tick. Time is just the running count of how many of those update cycles have happened. We aren't moving through time. We're just experiencing the process unfold, one single tick at a time.
So, when you think this way, the consequences are huge. Suddenly, quantum mechanics, with all its famous weirdness, starts to look different. It's like a compression layer. We're not seeing the super high-resolution movie of the single points every move. We're seeing a blurry, statistical summary. And from that, apparent randomness just pops out naturally. The famous Born rule, that's just a direct measurement of the visitation budget we talked about. And wave-particle duality, the paradox just melts away. A particle is just a hotspot, a place the point visits a lot. A wave is just how the chance of a visit spreads out.
Which brings us to a huge question. If everything is just a fleeting pattern of visits, why isn't the universe just fizz? How does anything last? How do you get stable things like electrons that stick around for billions of years? Well, that's where the math comes in. For a pattern to persist, it has to follow some very strict rules of the game.
And you're not going to believe this, but one of the keys to the whole thing is right here. This is Euler's identity. It's often called the most beautiful and profound equation in all of mathematics. And according to this theory, it's not just beautiful, it's the blueprint for stability.
Because in SPT, this isn't just a string of symbols, it's an entire sentence. It's a statement about a process. Each part has a physical meaning. It's basically telling you the exact recipe for how a stable, repeating process can interact with a stable, persistent structure and cancel it out perfectly, making it vanish back into nothing. It's literally the equation that defines the line between something existing and not existing.
Okay, so besides that amazing equation, there's another key number that pops up. And no, this isn't numerology or anything like that. The number is 12, and it turns out to be absolutely fundamental for anything that wants to stick around.
So, why 12? It's the absolute minimum number of steps a process that has some kind of internal twist or bias needs to take to get back to where it started perfectly, so it can repeat itself over and over without falling apart. It's the heartbeat of persistence. And what's the most fundamental, stable particle we know? The electron. In this theory, an electron is the physical embodiment of this n equals 12 cycle. It's what a stable 12-step loop looks like in our universe.
All right, so we've got the rules for how a single pattern can be stable. But the universe isn't just a soup of electrons. How do these things combine to build bigger stuff, like atoms? This brings us to the next big idea, the cornerstone of agreement. It's all about how these patterns cooperate.
Now, I need to be super clear here. When we say agreement, we're not talking about two things making a decision. This is a totally mechanical, physical process. It's all about one thing, efficiency. It's like two dancers finding a shared rhythm. Two patterns are in agreement if, by coming together, they find a way to coexist that is just plain cheaper. It costs the universe less energy to maintain them together than it did to maintain them apart. It's a marriage of convenience.
Let's make this concrete and look at hydrogen. You've got a proton, which is a really expensive, stable pattern. It creates this big gradient of visitation frequency around it. Now an electron, which is a much cheaper pattern, comes along, it doesn't get pulled in by some mysterious force. Instead, its own internal cycle kind of feels out the proton's gradient and finds the perfect sweet spot, an orbit where its own rhythm can lock in perfectly with the proton's rhythm. And that combined setup, it's the absolute cheapest, most efficient state for the system. That state of minimum cost is the hydrogen atom.
And here's why hydrogen is so special. Its stability is no fluke. It is the single most efficient, low-waste structure the universe can build according to these rules. The simple one-to-one relationship between the proton and electron allows for this perfect, clean phase locking. It's a perfect agreement. When you start adding more protons and neutrons, you get all these competing patterns, and finding that low-cost agreement gets way, way harder. That's why many heavier nuclei are unstable.
So, as we start to wrap this up, it's important to realize what's being proposed here. This isn't just another physics theory with a few new particles. This is a pitch for a completely new language, a new grammar for talking about reality itself, a grammar that's all about process, not objects.
And the really wild part, when you start speaking this new language, a lot of the biggest, most frustrating paradoxes in physics, they don't get solved. They just dissolve. They were never real problems in the first place. They were just artifacts of the old language. Infinities at the center of black holes? Gone, because the process has a smallest step. Wave-particle duality? Just a matter of scale. That spooky action at a distance? Just two patterns that share the same deep history in the single process. The whole quantum versus classical divide, it just fades away.
And this all leads to a final, really profound quote from the source material. We are not of the field or fields, but of the cyclic motion of the voxel instants. Just think about that for a second. It's saying we aren't made of stuff that exists in the universe. We are the universe's process. You and I are just these unbelievably complex, stable, self-reinforcing patterns being traced out by the motion of that one single point.
Which leaves us with one last question to chew on. If reality really is a process,
if it's a kind of language instead of a collection of things, then what is it trying to say? What's the story that this single unfolding process is telling?